Everything that I do is to understand the world better.
Exit out the same way you came. Exit out the
I really hope you enjoy. Peace out for now.
Yeah, thank you so much for that intro. Super excited here to be talking to you guys, sharing my story with you guys. And just like me talking here alone gives me a lot of value, that experience, but I want you guys to gain value as well. And when I ask myself, what does success really look like for this presentation? I want you guys to walk away with action items you can take to make your life better, or gain more perspective about the potential that you can have in your life to really make your life better. And my presentation's tailored around doing things for you rather than for something like for a system. I want this to be super engaging, and let's get started. So when I was thinking about success for this presentation, one of the questions I asked myself was, hey, like what would like grade 9 me want to hear as advice? And basically to understand that, you have to like look at a bit of characterization of who I was last year. So I'd say I was a very typical high school student. I overvalued school. Like grades meant everything to me. If I got like an 80 on a test, like that's the end of the world for me, because my train of thought was literally, hey, if I do well in high school, I'm going to go into a good university, and a good university determines the rest of my life. It determines the network. It determines like the job I'll get, and the job determines the quality of life. It's just whole train of thought that says, oh, like high school is literally the end of the world and your grades matter. And because of that thought, I was stressed out the whole entire time, and I was caring about the things that don't really matter. I'll talk more about better priorities than just school alone. But also from this characterization, I also cared too much about what people thought of me. I was very insecure about looks, insecure about if people thought I was smart or not. And because of that, I ended up wasting a lot of time on social media. Um, for you teenagers like on this call, like you guys know about all the like time waster trends on social media. Like for example, people could say swipe up for a to be honest or a rate. And that's a waste of time because it's just amplifying your own insecurities and amplifying like how much it matters if someone like likes you or not. And I'd say if you were to compare me to this year, that totally changed. And I think many of you guys can relate to the typical high schooler. I'd say the typical high schooler is probably like stressed out, nervous, like cares too much about the wrong things and all. But I think what's different about me last year was I always had this drive to do something. Um, and this led me to do so many different things just for the sake of it, like not just for the sake of it, but because I genuinely wanted to do it. For example, I wrote this book in the summer of grade 7, and it ended up blowing up with 4,000 views, and that was a lot to me. Or I started my own blog in grade 8 just to talk about how to be more productive, how to view the world in a better lens. And I also made a lot of art and posted it on my art Instagram. In other ways, I also participated in my debating at my school and won a few awards. All of these things are examples of me just doing things because I loved doing that. These are all examples of me doing things just because I wanted to do them. And that is a crucial part of like who I am today because of this drive. But if you look at all these examples, they weren't really sustainable, right? Like I never finished that novel, or sometimes I was insecure about debating. And this year, if you were to compare my growth, I think it's very much different. I'm spending a lot more time on the things that I love and being more strategic about it. And my grades aren't even being sacrificed, and I'm way more happier because I'm doing what I love. For example, like I go to these conferences to meet new people, meet cool people who love making an impact on the world, or just loving what they do, right? And when your environment really changes, that pushes you to change as well, to do the things that you love. And so now if you're to compare me, I'd say I have my mindset changed a lot, right? I still have insecurities. I still have things that I don't really know that well. And I'm still managing my time on social media wisely. But I have this growth mindset, this mindset that says, hey, like, even if I don't know much, I'm going to learn. Even if I'm insecure, I'm going to get over those insecurities and do things and work on things that I can actually change about my life. And that, when you switch from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset, that does a lot to your life, right? Um, with the things that you lack in life, you start actually being able to work on important things. And I actually started spending much more time working on cool projects. For example, I built this company with my co-founder, Lana, and we were working on Naroka. Naroka is a company that wants to create personalized probiotics tailored to your unique microbiome, specifically with patients with mental health illnesses, such as depression. And this is because of the research that, like, hey, your microbiome is connected to your mental health. I also started working on this project called the Possum 13 Award, and I wrote this science proposal that basically proposes scientists to look into how fetal health is impacted in different gravity environments, because it's important to like sustainable space flights and technologies. And all these things make me super, super happy because I love doing them genuinely, and not because someone's telling me to do them, not because a teacher is like, hey, you got to write an essay. And another important thing to note that changed was I grew a lot more confidence. There's a difference between inner confidence and external confidence. Internal confidence being that you now have self-agency, that you say, I'm going to take control of my life and I'm able to make decisions on my own. But this also means that you have to take like responsibility in your life, right? If something goes wrong, you're not going to blame it on a system. You're not going to blame it on a friend. You're going to blame it on yourself, but not like as a way for you to grow, right? And that is an important thing to internalize. And so I'm going to be sharing with you guys today some of these some of the actions I've taken to make me grow. And the benefits of growing, I guess, is that you're a much happier person and you see more purpose in your life. And that is truly valuable. And so this year, with all these learnings that I had in mind, I created this like thesis statement or a hypothesis that if you really want to do something with your life, if you're really passionate about it, and that factor is greater than an insecurity or greater than what people think of you, then you are just going to pursue it. The result is a different matter, right? Of course. For example, like if you want to climb Mount Everest, if you truly want to climb Mount Everest, you would climb Mount Everest. But the question if you actually are able to do so is a different question. But essentially, if you're able to follow your passion, you will get there somehow, right? You're going to pursue it and you're going to spend a lot more time to building technical skills to really become a better person or become a better painter or like a better scientist, engineer. And it all comes down to wanting to do the things that you want. And that's why it's so important to follow your passions or just to identify what you want, which I'm going to talk about a little more. And actually, this year, when I internalized what I just said, that if you really want something, you'll do it, I came to the conclusion that everything that I do is to understand the world better. And that's what makes me happy. And so this could be to understand the world better. For example, like I love the sciences and I love the arts, right? If you can mute yourself, that'd be great. But essentially, both of these passions come from wanting to understand the world better. For the arts, I'm very curious about how we can describe things, how we can visualize things. And for the science, I'm curious about how we're able to describe how the world works through quantitative measures. And both of these things just fall into the theme of just wanting to learn, understanding. And that drive is way bigger than caring about what other people think or like insecurities in general, right? And you can see this with this artwork that I made a few weeks ago. this is truly representative of the things that I was learning that day. For example, I had a math class and we were learning about sine and cos graphs, and I just drew like an X and Y axis on my like sketchbook because I was fascinated by how X is influenced by Y and that like relationship. Or you even have this like drawing over here that shows the Einstein's theory of general relativity, because I was watching a documentary on Einstein. Like I was learning things because they were genuinely like fun and interesting to me. Or like you can look at this other area where I drew like little squiggly lines, and that day I was gardening and this artwork literally reflected the cool like patterns of nature. And so what this drawing really goes to show is that if you really enjoy life or like live out the experience, then your work becomes so much more interesting, right? If you genuinely like go into math class like wanting to learn, then your result is going to be unique. It's going to be really creative. And you find this as a pattern with a lot of successful people in our world. For example, Leonardo da Vinci. He's literally a polymath, a science and art god. All of his drawings, like he was ahead of his time, right? He was able to create artwork that really showed the human anatomy, or work on incredible shading skills. Or look at Neri Oxman here in the middle. She is a big contributor to MIT Creative Labs, or Einstein. Like there's no explanation needed for Einstein, right? Like we all know Einstein. He's super cool, and he was able to just pursue the physics and sciences because he genuinely was curious about how the world worked. Before, in his lifetime, he actually worked in like a post office or like a mundane, boring job, right? But he spent that time doing busy work. He spent that time when things were boring to think about sciences and how the world works. And both of these three people share one thing in common, and that is just the willingness to learn, or just love of life and like curiosity, right? They want to do things because they want to, not because someone told them to. And when you realize that the things that you want to do are important, that's when you can pursue them, and that's when you can contribute really unique work, right? I think that's truly important. It's a trend among many successful people. And this leads me to conclude for you guys, like just do things for you, right? Recognize your priorities first, set goals, and then achieve those goals once you recognize your priorities. And essentially, I have a bunch of action items and things you guys can do to really set those goals and know your priorities better, so you're able to do things for you and create unique content. And so one of these things, you guys can see this little graph over here. It shows you, so basically what you would do with this graph is you would write down all of your tasks, and then you would allocate those tasks into these boxes, right? For example, let's say I have to call Aaron back. I'm going to put that in urgent and not important. Or let's say I want to get a meeting with like a professional. I can put that in urgent and important, right? And this basically allows you to organize your priorities better so you can achieve the goals that you actually want to achieve. And you guys will actually realize that this one box over here is the most important box out there. This is the box that is not urgent and also important. This is the box where no one's telling you to do these things, but you want to do those things. And in order to identify what those things are, that's a really tricky question. And I struggle with that sometimes, figuring out what I should be working on, because these are the ones that are the big projects in life, the projects that are very unique and like important to you. And so that takes a lot of self-awareness to develop. I'll be talking about that a little bit more. But another way that you could figure out what you want to do is to make a life plan. It's very dramatic, but it works. I made a life plan like a month ago, and I keep on revising it. And it's really important to for me to visualize how things want to go and work on things strategically. How this works is you would have to think backwards, right? Identify your goal and then set things you can do to achieve that goal, right? And we can see that this is very useful because now you're being strategic about the way you approach your goals rather than just following what people are doing to achieve their goals, right? For example, this is a very niche example, or like, for example, your parents' goal for you is to go to university, right? And maybe that's not the strategic way to go for you to achieve the goal that you actually want in life, something like that, right? We have to think backwards. We can use going to university or going to like a conventional pathway to achieve a greater goal in life, right? For example, you could say, by the end of my life, like I want to be like an aerospace engineer or something like that. Now you got to identify what universities would be best for that program and train the technical skills right now to be qualified for that specific program. This is like just following like a conventional ways that you guys can relate to. But basically, you gotta be very strategic in your life and do the things that would help you align with your goal. This is very important to trace back and do this activity, because after I created my life goal, I write weekly updates and I write weekly goals. Like I set weekly goals, I write it down in my journal, and I refer to my life goal as I'm writing my weekly goals. And I'm like, hey, do my weekly goals align with my life goals? And this helps me to keep me in check, to really know that I'm on the right path and the right mindset to really achieve the things that I want by the end of my life. The thing with creating a life goal is that sometimes you don't have much self-awareness in mind, right? And you basically don't know what the end of your goal wants to be. And this is very hard to really develop that self-awareness for you to know what your goals are. And so the one things that you can actually train and set the goal for you right now is to be like, hey, my goal right now is to find out what my goal is. And to do that, you got to train self-awareness. And you can do this in many different ways. My favorite is journaling. I literally, journaling is my second mind. I think things and I just write them down, and it's able to help me to reflect and understand myself better, because I can go back and really understand what I was thinking back then, and it's a good reflection point. But it also allows me to know myself better because I'm talking to myself as in journaling. Or you can meditate every day, which I've been training to do. Or you can also find an accountability buddy. And for me, these are my close group of friends where we keep each other accountable. You tell each other what your goals are, and your friend could be like, hey, that doesn't make sense. I think you're just doing this to please other people. Or, hey, I think you're doing this out of insecurity. Find people in your life that you actually trust and people that care about your growth, because they are going to be the ones that give you good feedback for you to grow in life, right? If someone doesn't care about your growth and is only friends with you for like a very superficial reason, the feedback that they give for you is tailored for you to do things for them. It's never for you to achieve your potential or do the things that you really want in life, right? And so find that accountability buddy that can really call you out and be like, hey, you're not doing the right thing. You're not being authentic to yourself. And having that is super important for you to gain that self-awareness, for you to really understand what your goals are in life. But let's say self-awareness isn't enough. You also got to gain experiences. You got to know your data points and understand the world better and the perspectives that you live in, right? I think we all live in very like sheltered minds that we don't have many experiences, speaking as like teenagers, right? We don't know what it is like to pay the bills when it comes to housing or like the water bills, right? We don't know how to, our amount of like experiences are very limited because we haven't lived that long, right? And so the best way to do this is just to seek discomfort. gain as many experiences as possible. And this is just a practice for you to really develop the mindsets and skills that you can use as future reference, right? And this, like a side note about this, is that many of the times we are afraid to achieve, to go for a goal because we think that there's risk associated with it. But sometimes this isn't even the case, right? There is a such thing as perceived risk, and there's another thing as just pure risk. For example, if you thought like asking your crush out, that is a perceived risk. Like if they say no, like that's just a no. Like it's not actual risk. Like no one dies. Like it's not that big of a deal, right? Your mind tricks you into thinking it's an actual risk. So you got to identify the things that are risks and actual risk. And the things that we're afraid to do in life as teenagers are actually a lot of perceived risk. And so when I tell you to gain as many experiences as possible, like even if you feel discomfort doing it, you should do it, right? For example, like I wrote my first article last year, and I got a lot of discomfort from writing it because I was literally writing about a university topic like nanosensors. And I was, in my mind, I was thinking like, what right do I have to write about such a like cool topic, right? And I thought that was a lot of perceived risk. Like, oh my God, like what would my friends think of me if I wrote this article? That like doesn't make sense at all. You gotta gain experiences and just go for it. And another thing that I realized was that you also gotta create this artificial environment, because sometimes you're with people that don't care about your growth, or are caring about the wrong things, such as like likes on Instagram, or superficial things that don't contribute to your growth. So one thing is to like physically change your environment, like go to programs that align with your vision, is like being like this cool person that works on like STEM. If you can't change your physical environment, then you can create an artificial environment, right? Like before this quarantine thing was a thing, I'd have to go to school for several hours a day, right? And be surrounded with an environment where a lot of people just cared about grades. But I can create this artificial environment where during the breaks, I could be listening to podcasts, I could be reading Paul Graham's essays, and surround myself with cool people from the internet that are very successful. By the way, I 100% recommend Paul Graham's essays. Like just search them up, and he has amazing insights there. But essentially, you can, the internet has so many cool things. You can literally create an environment of your own and crowdsource a lot of information for your own growth. And like anyone can do this because we all have access to the internet right now. And the really tangible result of pursuing the things that you want to do, really creative and unique work, right? Look at this artwork. So basically I was just experimenting with stenciling, and I think this creates really unique work. This was in a life where I would go on a lot of walks, and I would like to observe nature. And I see that this is very reflected in my artworks, just because I was observing the world around me and trying to understand it. Learning for the sake of, learning not for the sake of just getting good grades, but learning because I liked to learn. Or look at this skateboard that I created. Like I literally made this skateboard, and it's about gene editing. I don't know if you guys know what gene editing is, but it's a super cool emerging technology that you're just able to edit genes and create special characteristics, right? And this was
Mutation?
sorry.
Is it like genetic mutation? Kind of.
Not necessarily genetic mutation, but you can change your genes and edit code. It's basically like coding, but for your genes. For example, like if I want to make this like apple red, but it's green, I can edit its genes to make it red, which is super cool, right? And I was just reading articles about gene editing that day, and I got super intrigued about what gene editing really is. And so I made this artwork about my commentary of what gene editing is. And it essentially just shows that like gene editing has many potentials. It breaks the boundaries of nature and just my thoughts on gene editing, right? Or look at this artwork where I loved my walks to school, and this was just reflected with my artworks, right? Or this example of, hey, like I had to study for this bio test the other night, and I hate studying for bio when I just have to like memorize certain terms. So I literally took out a canvas and I just started painting my notes. I wrote like, hey, cytoplasm, jelly, or like contains water and nutrients and raw materials, or like mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, something like that, right? Because this was just a creative process to me, and I just like did it because it was fun to me. Or this other artwork to the left, I was listening to this song repeatedly, and I thought to myself, how can I translate one type of artwork into another type? How can I translate a song into a visual, right? And so I literally was listening to the same song over and over again, and I was trying to create artwork that represents that song. And this was shown through this artwork. You guys can see like the movements of the line represents like the rhythm, or like the bass beats represents this like blocks that she's jumping on. And so this all comes from me loving to do the things that I love to do and just pursuing that, right? And that comes from taking a break from life sometimes, like school or whatever, and really caring about the world around you, loving to learn, and just indulging in content about what is like the meaning of life, right? Essentially, just it comes down to exploration to me, and I think that's really fun. But you guys may be wondering, like, where do I start? Literally just start somewhere, gain inspiration from something. Like, you guys probably all have like thoughts in your head that are like, hey, what if I read this cool article? Or like, hey, what if I had this like cool like TikTok idea? I'm joking. Like, hey, what if I had like this cool book idea? Just like write it down and just start somewhere. It doesn't have to be good the first time. As you guys can see, like to the left is my first article that I ever wrote, and to the right is my most recent. And basically, because I started somewhere and I kept on going, I'm able to improve the quality of my content. And one action item that you guys can take that I do sometimes, literally when I wake up, I just take my notebook and just write what I'm thinking for like 30 minutes straight. And this is like a stream of conscious type thing. Like, if it doesn't make sense to write down what I'm saying, I'm just gonna write it down. I'm just gonna write everything on my mind. And I realized that every time you start journaling, you always end with a conclusion of like inspiration, or like if you're feeling sad and you start journaling, you always end feeling happy. And that's something that's super magical. And it's a great area to start with inspiration and self-awareness, because now you know the thoughts that are in your head and you can create something out of these thoughts. And so I hopefully that inspired you guys to really improve your life, or like do things that really matter to you, and gain more perspective about the potential that you guys have. And hopefully you guys have some action items that you can take to do cool stuff with your life, right? By the way, here's a little social media plug. You guys can follow me. And I know that Linka wanted me to put the WeChat thing over here, and I'm gonna take the questions now.
Exit out the same way you came.